Hi, so I want to talk about a video by Stuart Gillam which was uploaded 3 days ago, which I think is well worth a watch. It's called "Was the Lucy Letby Trial Judge Incompetent?" And I'm going to go through the timestamps he's got here so we can see what he discusses. Let's get that up. Come on. Okay, I've got a bit of a sticky mouse. Okay, so there is the barring of the defence attempt to call expert witness Dr. Mike Hall. There is the report by the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health ruled irrelevant. There is the consultant denial of suboptimal care. There is the workplace grievance ruled inadmissible, and there is the Dr. Evans baby N and baby E allegation contradictions, and the sources he's used, and he puts up the sources and the relevant parts from them, which is really good because it helps us understand what has gone on here. So Aaron Lloyd Powell workplace grievance meeting, but Mel is nice in quotes. That is, and he's included the links, which is the Thirlwell Public Inquiry. Ravi Jayaram, as a paediatrician of 30 years, from the Independent. Dr. Green, it's likely they lied, from the Thirlwell Inquiry. So basically the Lucy Letby trial, it was a big trial, it was a complex trial. There was a lot of evidence, there was a lot of information. So even if you're interested and knowledgeable, chewing through every single transcript and all the witness statements, all the evidence, it's huge. So what Stuart's been able to do here, he's been able to focus on a few pertinent aspects of this, with really good examples, and he's been able to show how, you know, some things contradict each other, how some things weren't allowed that should have been allowed, how some things were allowed through which shouldn't have been allowed through, and how that obviously skewed what the jury heard and how the trial proceeded, and obviously the verdict that happened at the end of it. And there were things that had gone over my head, and I'm sure over all of our heads, because there was just so much information, and he's managed to pull out these relevant pieces and to explain them in a little more detail. So the first thing, and I'm going to have to find my here it is. Why have I got this first? That's Dr. Green. So yes, they applied, as we know, it really was remarked on that Lucy, you know, after the event, that Lucy Letby, her defence team, they hardly brought in any witnesses at all. I think there was just the plumber, that was it. There was a lot of comments, well, she had the chance to do this, and, you know, the feeling that if she was innocent, then there would have been lots of people wanting to be on her defence team and, you know, to speak in her defence. Well, we now know that certain people really were leaned on to speak for the prosecution, but also Dr. Hall, the defence team, wanted to get him to speak in Lucy Letby's defence. They made the application, but the this was turned down. So that was one reason, one person who was not called in her defence, who could have been called, and he goes, so Stuart goes into what happened there. Now what's this about? The prosecution will say that this, to be admissible, that this has to be relevant to an issue in this case. So that might be about the grievance procedure. No, I think this is still about Dr. Hall, actually. So the admissibility of expert opinion. So that would be him. So that was turned down. Okay. There was also the fact that short staffing was an issue at the hospital. So that would have certainly been a mitigating factor. That was ruled out, so the jury really didn't get to hear about that, or it was ruled not relevant. And I'm just going to refer back to the first thing with my timestamps on it. So the report by the Royal College of Paediatricians and Child Health, that had some, that wasn't allowed as part of the trial. So let's move on, because that obviously was on the that was obviously the previous bit. We're now on to the consultant denial of suboptimal care, that they were short, they were short-staffed, they weren't doing enough rounds. Then we come to Ravi Jayaram. Not sure whether we're on to number 4 here, but nevertheless, this is Ravi Jayaram. As a paediatrician of 30 years and a doctor of 32 years, if my character was such that I would make things up, I would hope friends, colleagues, doctors, nurses, parents, family would have picked up on this before now, which is a very, very wordy way of putting things. He is quite wordy in any case, but as we've seen before, he does seem to use words, particularly repetition, to obfuscate, to redirect attention and confuse if he is under the spotlight. And it looks like this has happened here. It says, I could not explain the sequence of events, why they had happened. I couldn't explain why it had happened in the first place, and couldn't explain why the physiological responses to timely and appropriate interventions did not happen as they should have happened. And that sort of repetition, with repeating things, you give the relevant details less of an impact each time. So the result is to confuse people, basically. So that was that one. And then we have something from the Thirlwell inquiry. And I don't know if this is a transcript, because obviously Lucy Letby wasn't in the Thirlwell inquiry, but we've got a list of what certain people said. So this looks like minutes. Or notes from maybe more than one discussion, because we got Lucy Letby, no one wants to help me, and then AW, I wouldn't be here if I didn't want to help you. The statements to pick up on: it is clear that the two consultants call the shots. So they're focusing in that meeting on two consultants, and we all know which two those are, and have put pressure on the exec team in making this decision. And then Dr. Green says, I was disgusted by their behaviour. It is likely that they lied. And also, this is followed by, also met with scrutiny as to why they had to attend the meeting and wanted it in writing. They were the only two that showed no empathy. And then AW is reported to have said, I believe that the staffing issue was a red herring. There is no difference between July and August, and the evidence supports this. So this is a really, really interesting bit of material that he's managed to bring up here. So on to the next bit. And then they're discussing Lucy Letby's performance in relation, and also in relation to the grievance procedure. That was ruled irrelevant in the trial, and Stuart also talks about that. So I said, I don't know who's saying this, I said to SB, what if LL goes home and kills herself? She has elderly parents, they might die. And he said, I don't care. Following on, another commonality from the assessment was Mel Taylor. I told SB this. She wasn't as prominent as LL, but still stood out, and his response was, but Mel is nice. And we have, obviously, from the one interview that we have of Stephen Breary giving, he talks about how, you know, he thought, I remember thinking and saying, this is off the top of my head, not nice Lucy, but he's obviously contradicted himself there. And then, interestingly, CG, that must be Dr. Green then. Are there any medical professionals who show commonality this way? And EP, that must be Aidan Powell. Yes, Dave Harkness, I showed Sue Hodkinson. So Dave Harkness, interestingly, he was on the team with the very first baby, baby A. So that is interesting. He was there right from the start, and this was the baby who collapsed after the bag was changed. So we've still got a little bit more. Oh, that's the same. And then we come on to Dr. Evans talking about baby N and baby E. So with baby N, he talks about putting any sort of implement like a tube into the baby's mouth and into the throat. It would be sufficient to cause trauma to the soft tissue, basically. So he's asked about that, and then when he's asked about baby E, he then says, oh no, the tube couldn't possibly have done it. He says the tube is, you know, those tubes are so soft they couldn't even hurt a rice pudding, or they couldn't even break the skin of a rice pudding. So watch that. That was it then. So do watch this video, because it clearly shows up where there've been contradictions, where, you know, stuff hasn't been put before the jury that really should have been put before the jury. Stuff has gone before the jury that really shouldn't have gone before the jury, because even with, say, Dewey Evans contradicting himself later on, the fact that you know, people will hear what he said in the first place, and because he's got the status of expert witness, I think that is more likely to count in people's minds than otherwise. Is very pertinent, this video, very informative, and also it nicely boils down some of the complicated issues in this trial. And I really wanted to add as well from the last video I made, where I questioned the justice system a little bit, and, you know, how do people come to, you know, the conclusions when they come to. And I think there is a certain amount of looking for a horse rather than a zebra, and I think that is, you know, as humans we should be doing that, otherwise we all become conspiracy theorists. But you have two alternatives with Lucy Letby. You either have a nurse that's gone rogue and gone about murdering babies, or you have two consultants, and it really does seem to have been two, that were having a fit of spite because they didn't like being questioned or talked back to or whatever by this nurse, and they decided, you know, out of sheer vindictiveness, to drive this to the point where police investigation ensued and a trial and a lengthy prison sentence. Well, which one is more believable on the face of it? You know, because the nurse harming babies, we have already had cases of that. We've obviously had Beverly Allett in the UK. there've been American cases, and the nurses who've been falsely, and we've obviously had Harold Shipman as well, the people who've been falsely convicted and then cleared, this is actually very, very recent. There, to my knowledge, there are no precedents for medical professionals who wanted to tuck up a nurse for the, you know, because they'd been wrong-footed. So there is the sort of general psychology coming into play here as well. So, okay, that's me for today. Please like, subscribe, and hope to see you in the next video.